We have and will continue to discuss BYU's options at quarterback going into the 2024 campaign, but why don't we let a guy who is in the mix for that starting position, let him have his say on why he believes he is the right option for the Cougars? Well, Gerry Bohanon will do just that on today's show.
You are Locked On Cougars, your daily podcast on the BYU Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? I'm Jake Hatch, your host here on Locked On Cougars, your resident BYU insider. Thank you for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. Appreciate all of you for being everydayers with us right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. The motto is your team every day, and as such, we are your original daily podcast focused on all things BYU sports. All right, let's dive right in on today's show. As I mentioned, I'm going to let you guys hear from Gerry Bohanon. Now, Saturday after BYU wrapped up spring camp, we had a chance in the media to go around and talk to some of the more prominent players on BYU's roster, talk about where things stand for them as they come out of spring ball, heading into this summer months, as we like to call them, ahead of training camp beginning in August. Well, Gerry Bohanon is a guy that I think has spoken to a fair degree this spring camp, but myself alongside Kevin Reynolds from the Salt Lake Tribune, as well as Jay Drew from the Deseret News, we're able to sit down with Gerry Bohanon and essentially just kind of pepper him with questions about his rehab in terms of his shoulder injury, how long that took, why he's confident that he is back fully and capable of competing for the starting job at BYU. And it ended up stretching into around roughly 15 minutes worth of a conversation. So I am going to let you guys hear this conversation. Typically, I wouldn't do this. I think most of you understand that I like to make it more focused on individual things. But the thing is, the way he was answering questions, and I thought we all had a pretty good flow of asking good questions with follow-ups, and it was just a very interesting and a very, I think, insightful chat with Gerry Bohanon, because it explains a lot about why I believe he is so confident in his ability to contribute to this BYU football program and potentially be BYU's QB1. So without further ado, here's part one of the conversation we had with Gerry Bohanon last Saturday.
Now that spring camp is over, I would just sum it up.
I thought it was a great opportunity to learn, to get back into it, just taking reps and learning from everybody that's around me. That was like my biggest goal, want to get back to operating and playing the position. For me, it wasn't about getting caught up in the big high moments or the low moments. It was more about learning and taking every opportunity as a learning opportunity. So that's what all it was for me.
How is your shoulder kind of feeling throughout spring camp? Do you feel stronger?
Yeah, I feel like it's grown over the number of practices, the number of workouts. Like it's been stacked days. I remember at the beginning I got a little sore, but just being able to stack days and taking it through it has been good for it.
You unleashed one, not this today, but the last time we got to watch you guys in the indoor. It was like a good 60-yard. You know the throw I'm talking about?
I know what you're talking about. Yeah, it was a good one. It felt good.
Okay.
It felt good. I still feel like
kind of the sign you're back totally? Was that?
To be honest with you, kind of, but not really. For me, it's like I want to be able to do that with ease after, and like just continue to be able to just do whatever. Like, so for me, it's like, okay, I've had some moments where I'm like, okay, I'm feeling like myself. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, you have those moments where, like, okay, I can make all the throws now. It's like, that's like a good feeling to know that, okay, I can rip a deep ball down the field. So it's like, but can you do that back to back and continue to do that throughout a game, throughout a practice, like those things. So just continue to stack those reps of that.
Does your shoulder get tired quicker right now? Or, like, why do you think right now that maybe that hasn't happened where you can do it back to back to back?
It's like an injury. It's just that it's an injury. You come off an injury, it's like it takes a number of reps to get it back to the point that it was. You got to think about it. Before you injured, you've been training from whenever you started playing that position to get that shoulder. You weren't always able to throw the ball 60 yards. You have to build up to that point. Maybe as a sophomore in high school, you were throwing 40. It's like, but you threw for years and years and reps. So it's like it just continues to build up. It's like walking. Like you don't just magically start walking one day. Like you go from crawling to trying to stand up to trying to take a few steps. Then you start walking a little bit. Now I can walk good. Then you start running. It's like that. So it's like never getting caught up in or taking for granted the opportunity that you get because people don't understand, like, when you hurt something, like, it takes a lot to get it back because, yeah, you might have had this injury, but during your time of not being able to do anything, everything around it gets weak too because you're not working it. You can't work it because you're injured yourself. So it's like just making up for that time. And that's the only thing that'll get it right is the time and getting the reps of it.
How much of a layoff did you actually have, like, in terms of not throwing?
Well,
in terms of when you were injured, like, was there a time where you weren't able to throw?
Yeah, I didn't throw for 6 months.
Okay.
I didn't throw a ball for 6 months.
How difficult was that?
Difficult. Very, very difficult. But you knew you couldn't do it. So when I came back, when I started throwing like a tennis ball.
Okay.
I started throwing a tennis ball. Then my first day throwing the football, think about it, you go from being able to throw the ball 60 yards easily. I couldn't throw the ball 10 yards my first day throwing. It was like just dying. Like I couldn't do it. So it's like you reflect on those moments and you think about the steps you've made. Like if anybody can tell you like a shoulder injury, any injury is a serious injury. It's like when you tear your ACL, like trying to get back into running and cutting. Like that takes time. It's like because it's almost like the muscles and the nerves and the tissues, it know how to do it, but it kind of forgot how to do it. So it's like, okay. I remember throwing, I started throwing a little bit. Like at one point I was throwing like 20 balls a day. Mm-hmm. I remember when I tried to jump up to 40. My shoulder was like, hold on now. That's quite a bit now. But it's like the more you do it and the more you take it through, it's like, oh, I can do this. I'm prepared to do this.
So it's been quite a process.
Yeah, it's been a process, yeah, for sure. Mm-hmm. Like this is probably my 5th month throwing consistently.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's like you look at it, you can't start throwing too early or doing too much early because you'll just re-injure yourself. So it's like you have to trust the doctors and trust what they say, trust your physicians and everything, and just follow the path that they have you on. And eventually over time, it'll continue to make strides and improve.
By the time A-Rod and Matt Mitchell and those guys came to see you, how far along were you in that rehab process? Like, in terms of, like, how much were you able to show them that you could do?
I threw quite a bit for them. That was at the point when I had just, like, so they came to see me in December. Up until November, I was probably throwing about 60 balls a week, maybe. And in November, because I knew December was coming around, I started to increase it. So then I would get up to like 60, 70 balls a day. Then by the end of November, beginning of December, I was trying to increase it some more. But it was like just steady increasing and increasing the distance, the velocity. It's like the process is so weird because some days you come in there, you might be throwing weighted balls. But it's like you throwing it to the wall, but you got a max velocity. Like you're not just out there throwing a football, lobbing the ball. Like you got to take your shoulder through deep balls. You got to take it through driving the ball. You got to take it through quick game, intermediate throws, deep balls. You have to go through all of that and continue to stack it because it's all different.
So are you at the end of the process, or is it still ongoing?
No, I'm at the end. Okay. I'm at the end. I'm good now, okay. But it's still like, like feeling it. Like you can get it better. You can get better. Like you talk to anybody with anything. Like you kind of hurt something. Yeah, maybe you feel good, but it's like, I think about you built that strength up for years. So it's like getting all of that back. Like you still have to continue to build and take care of it.
Going into that December, were you at all worried, like on your end, that your shoulder wouldn't be healthy enough where A-Rod and those guys might not think you're ready?
I had a point I did think that, honestly. I had a little, I got sore. I was fatigued at a point, and you go through it, when you try to increase those numbers like that, you go through some times where, hey, after that, you're like, this don't feel good. And so it's like, you like, oh, can I do this? But I had the moments, but it was like, everybody always told my docs everything, like, you're gonna have some days you just have to take it through it. Like, it's not gonna feel good, but you just gotta keep going. And it's in the moment, you don't really see that. You're like, dang, why does this feel this way? Like I just wanted to feel normal. It's been this much time, but it's like once you've overcome that soreness, once you've overcome doing it continuously, you feel good. You feel better. You get more confident in doing it. And I say, I had moments, but I was able to get it together. I feel like that I was able to get it together.
There you go, part one with Gerry Bohanon, BYU quarterback. We'll get to the rest of his comments here in just a moment. A lot more on where he believes he stands with spring camp over with and obviously entering the summer months, what he hopes to accomplish this summer, what he's planning on doing in terms of improving his overall game. And just he talks a little bit more also. We'll talk about his experience at BYU as a whole. We'll get to all that as we roll on right here on Locked On Cougars. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at LinkedIn. Now, LinkedIn is here for you guys no matter what you're trying to do. But when you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality candidates and professionals that are right for the role. You don't want to have to waste your time. That's why you need to check out our friends over at LinkedIn Jobs, as the tools help you find the right professionals for your team, faster and for free. LinkedIn is not just another job board out there, my friends. It's a vast network of more than 1 billion professionals, making it the best place to hire. In fact, it gives you access to professionals you simply can't find anywhere else. LinkedIn does all that while making the process easy and intuitive. And the best part is LinkedIn is constantly finding ways to make the process as easy as possible to hire. They have just launched a feature that helps you write job descriptions, making the process even easier and faster as well. 2.5 million small businesses use LinkedIn for their hiring needs. So post your job today for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Post that job for free once again. Check them out. Our friends over at LinkedIn. Of course, terms and conditions apply. Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. I'm sure a number of you, like me out there, watch Fox Sports or ESPN all day long, and it feels like be a little bit overwhelming with all the shouting that seems to be going on by all the talking heads on those networks. Make the switch today, my friends, to Locked On Sports Today. Is a free 24/7 sports streaming channel designed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming that's going on the other networks. Locked On Sports Today brings you all the can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. It's all part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right. Had a chance once again to catch up with Gerry Bohanon and talk further about where he stands as he looks to compete for the starting quarterback job alongside Jake Retzlaff. I thought this part 2 of the conversation was very insightful about where he sees himself, honestly, just with the BYU football program, what he hopes to accomplish, and what he's enjoyed so far about being in Provo. So here you go, part 2, the rest of the conversation with Gerry Bohanon last Saturday.
So A-Rod just told us today the quarterback battle's going on into the fall. One, are you surprised by that at all? And two, you've been to these quarterback battles before. Has this one been any different?
I'm not surprised by that at all because wherever Jake just went, Jake's a good player. I mean, being able to come out and compete with him every day has been fun. Like, just being able to elevate each other's game, we learn from each other's reps. That's how you want to go about it. So honestly, it wasn't a surprise because we both did some really good things, but we still have to make sure that we're growing and getting better each and every day. And, what was the second part of the question?
You've been through these quarterback battles before. Is this one the same old?
I would say it's been the same. We equal reps, 1s and 2s reps, rotating it, alternate getting different centers, different receivers, different O-line. I would say it's all been kind of similar to every other competition I've been a part of, which they're doing it the right way to make sure we're getting equal reps. Nobody's getting more reps than the other. We're getting the same exact opportunity.
Are you happy that this is going into the summer just to give you a little bit more of an opportunity to?
I am because, like I said, coming off an injury, I haven't practiced in over a year. Like my last practice was like October 13th of 2022. Just been able to get back into it. I mean, I know, like, of course you want to be perfect, and out there you have your days where maybe you have a couple plays you want back, and like for me, it's like just I went in there with the mindset of just finding ways to get better. For me, getting back into it because a year might not sound that long, but think about a year of no practice. Like not going out there catching a snap and taking a rep behind the O-line. It's like, you want to come back and be perfect, but you also have to be real with yourself and understand that you haven't done it in a minute. So it's like it's going to take some time to get back. So I'm just glad to be able to continue to compete and show that I'm going to continue to make strides and grow in the offense and as a player.
Talking with Coach Roderick, he talked about the fact that you have the base knowledge of this offense having played with Jeff Grimes. He said that it's more about you getting comfortable with the terminology here and it being second nature.
Yes.
Do you feel like you're on your way to that?
I feel like I'm on my way, but I'm not there yet. Okay. Like, I'm very honest with myself. I'm not there yet. Like at the beginning, I would still get some things kind of mixed up with the way I used to do things at Baylor. Some signals, some terminology. A lot of terminology has changed. The way we want to do things have changed. Some new things have been added. So it's like getting used to that and making that second nature where you're not having to walk up and thinking about what was just called. It's like, okay, I got this. He's running this, this going to happen. If this happens, I can do this with the ball. It's like those kind of things. Like you want it to be where it's just naturally flowing. The game slow down for you. Like the game is slowing down each and every day, but you want the game as slow as it could be. Like you watch like guys like Tom Brady, like he was in that Patriots offense for the longest. It was almost like breathing for him. And that's how you want it to be. You want it to be that simple.
Do you think you're thinking a lot when you're at the line right now?
Not all the time. I do find myself where if it's a new play or something, a new look I haven't seen, yes, I'm thinking. Honestly, I'm thinking about it. I'm trying to picture it and maybe kind of determine what's going to happen because you kind of have to do that based off the coverage that you get. So for me, I wouldn't say I'm thinking a lot all the time, but there are sometimes I catch myself to where it's not like, this is going to happen. It's like, let me think about this. It's like that. So for me, yes, sometimes.
These guys won 2 games in the Big 12 last year. You've played in the Big 12, you know about it. You've also played in USF, in a pretty good conference. Where's the talent level here compared? Do you feel like this team can compete in the Big 12?
Yes, I do. I feel like we're a talented room, a talented team. I feel like all the rooms are talented. I think that we can compete. Big physical guys, fast guys, we just have to understand that going into the Big 12, my thing that I noticed being in it for a few years, you never know who's going to win the Big 12. Every week is a competitive game. Like, you could remember Kansas. I was telling a story about this 2 days ago, Kansas. I remember playing Kansas when they were still not good, but you played them and you was like, hold on, this is not the Kansas I'm used to playing. These guys have gotten better. So it's like, the next year come around, they start off like 6-0 or something like that. And you're like, okay, they have a good team. But it's like, that's every year. That's every game. So you want to go into it with that mindset like, there's no pushovers. I can't just kind of mess around and not work hard and not try to perfect my craft and expect to win. Like, you have to earn the right to win. Like, those games, you have to earn the right to win those games. So it's important to know that everybody's talented in the Big 12, which you want to be on a stage where it's competitive, it's fun, you want to play against teams that are good because that's when you can showcase your abilities and that's when the games are most fun.
You're one of those rare players who's played twice against BYU in your career. So you have the perspective of knowing the rep of BYU going up against them. How do you think it compares to what you expected, like when you were playing against them versus what you've experienced inside the program now?
I can see. So I would give BYU all the credit. They are a very, very physical team every year. Okay. I remember my first time getting talked about BYU guys. I was like, okay, these guys ready to play today. And so it's like for me getting here, I can see what the standard is. We just got to get back to that standard. The expectation is to be a physical dominant team, a physical dominant offense and defense. So we got to get back to that. For me, it's just like being able to see it twice before even getting him. You're like, okay, these guys have an expectation, and football means a lot to that place, a lot to those guys. So it's like we got to make sure that everybody's feeling the same way they were years ago. And it's like you can't get complacent with anything. It's like always, like I feel like playing BYU, everybody was always trying to put them as an underdog because they were non-conference, but they didn't think that way. The way they approached the game, it was never that way. It was like, we're expecting to win. We're expecting to beat you. It's like we got to have that mindset every single week. We got to expect to win and do everything that we can to win.
When you played against BYU versus what you saw on film last year, do you think the offense lost its identity at all?
I'm not going to say it lost its identity at all. I just feel like watching it, the details and everybody weren't on the same page. The thing about an offense, you got to have 11 guys doing their part. And it was just like maybe some guys didn't know exactly what was trying to be accomplished within this play, within this rep. So it's like everybody got to understand their job on each play and just execute their job. That is it. And so like for me, I wouldn't say that it lost its identity. I just feel like each year you have a different level of talent, different players, and so it's like maybe things might be a little bit different because you have to run this play more, these type of plays more because this is a different team.
All right, see you.
Excuse me. So for me, I feel like that was just all it was. Kind of everything. I don't know. First year in the Big 12, that's different going from non-conference to Big 12 ball. Like it's just different. That's for anybody. Like anybody can make that jump, and it's gonna be different. It takes time to learn the level of play and to stand up to that level of play because week in and week out, like I said, you're gonna play some good competition.
What will the next 4 months entail for you? What are your plans? Will you go home? Will you stay here?
I'm going to go home a little bit, but I'm here grinding. I'm going to work with John Beck a little bit. I'm planning to get down there a few times, work with him quite a bit this summer. I'm going to work with the guys, watch film with the guys, throw with the guys, just work out, just trying to get my body ready, get my body and make improvements with my body, my shoulder, my arm, my throwing mechanics, the film, the offense, the terminology, just making sure I'm diving into that each and every day.
Have you worked with John?
I worked with John once before spring ball.
Okay.
That was it. Yeah. He's really, really good. Really, really good. And so I plan to get back with him quite a bit.
Last thing for me, I just wanted to ask you, you haven't been here that long, but what's been being at BYU in general been like for you?
Dude, I tell you, man, this is like the most welcoming place. It's like if you're part of BYU, you family. So it's like me, I'm moved all the way across the country, but I feel comfortable here, I feel safe here. So that's the important part for me, just getting around everybody. Like everybody's so welcoming and so nice. Like you go in the store, everybody's waving, hi, how you doing? And it's like, this is a place that it's so, like the energy in the air is positive. Put it like that. Like you want to do good things, you want to help. It's like everybody's just the same way. It's not like a difference in anybody. Like it's like wherever you go, you could be on campus, eating somewhere in the store. It's like everybody's the same way. And so that's the place you want to be.
There you go, Gerry Bohanon, BYU quarterback. And like I said, I don't typically put up group interviews of that ilk. But the thing about this, I felt like sitting there talking with Gerry, I felt like it was a very insightful look into who he is as a person. This is a guy who comes off as very natural, very accommodating with the media, and just feels like he is in a good headspace right now as he looks to make that starting quarterback job at BYU his. I would think that in my mind going into the summer, I would give the edge ever so slightly to Jake Retzlaff, but talking with Gerry, man, I can't help but be impressed with this kid. I think I'm not a kid anymore, full grown man at this point in his collegiate career. The fact that he's battled back, had to sit out multiple months without even throwing a football, worked his way back up to throwing tennis balls, and was on a pitch count for a long period there. It was inspiring to hear him talk about the fact that just the kind of the love for the game and him wanting to finish his college career on the right note is what is driving him to do this. So I hope you guys enjoyed that. Love your feedback. Let me know what you think of Gerry and why you believe he is not going to be BYU starting quarterback. Either way, whatever you think might happen. But I truly believe this is going to be a true quarterback derby going into training camp, and it's going to last the first 2 or 3 weeks there before I think BYU will settle on a guy and announce them as the starter going into game week preparation mode. But it sounds like the Gerry is very much up for the challenge, and the hope is his shoulder continues to get stronger and stronger. He will become more and more consistent in terms of throwing the football with accuracy and obviously being able to drive that ball down the field, because he talked about the fact that there have been points where it's been a bit of a struggle in that regard. So big thank you to Gerry Bohanon for carving out some time to talk with us, and really appreciate him giving us a look into who he is as a person and also as a quarterback for the BYU Cougars. All right, coming up next, we finish out today's show with another look back at another season of BYU football history. It's day 2, 1923. What happened in BYU's sophomore season as an intercollegiate football program? We'll talk about that next right here on Locked On Cougars. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at eBay Motors. My friends, passion, driving patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance today. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, no matter what it is, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts, your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. With eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or you get your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. And with all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car into the MVP and bring home huge wins. Once again, keep your ride or die alive today at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply, and eBay Guaranteed Fit is only available to U.S. customers. But once again, check them out today at ebaymotors.com. Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. Appreciate all of you for your support. If you would like to be a part of the show in an advertising sense, you want to sponsor us, love to have you guys on board. We have some open advertising slots right now heading into the spring and summer months. It's a great time to latch on. There's still thousands of BYU fans checking us out every single day, so we can get you on the avenue to having podcasting advertising success. So email us, lockedonbyu@gmail.com. Love to hear from you guys and have you be a bigger part of Locked On Cougars on into the future here. All right, let's run out today's show. Let's start today talking about the 1923 BYU football program. Now, we talked about BYU's 1922 season, a pretty paltry output, just 10 points scored in 1922. Well, the hope going into 1923 was improvement under Coach Twitchell, Alvin Twitchell, BYU's first ever football coach. And BYU, by and large, got improvement, obviously, on the gridiron in 1923, but it did not go all that well overall for the Cougars. On the season, we won't bury the lead here. They ended up going 2-5 on the season, second to last in the Rocky Mountain Conference. The only team worse than them were the Wyoming Cowboys, who BYU did not play that season, who went 0 for on the year. BYU ended up, as I mentioned, 2-5 and made some history in 1923 that they had not done in 1922. They played their first ever non-conference matchup against Western State out of Colorado. BYU was one of the 2 wins on the year, shutting out the Western State Teachers, if I'm not mistaken, 19-0. That was a game in early November. Now, the interesting part about football schedules in this era of college football, my friends, is yesterday we talked about BYU playing 6 games in the 1922 season. They played 7 games in 1923. Their first game came September 29th, and then they didn't finish up the season until November 29th and played just 7 games. They had quite a few gaps in this. In fact, BYU's first game against Montana State was followed by a 2-week gap before they faced off against Colorado Agricultural. You know, it's Colorado State today. And then followed that up two straight weeks with games against Colorado and Utah. So kind of an interesting way the dichotomy of the schedule worked out. But BYU got their first win of the season in their season opener. They welcomed Montana State for the first time to Provo and beat the Bobcats 16-15 at BYU. Now, the interesting part about this game was that a future head coach for BYU was on the opposing sideline. Some of you may know the name G. Ott Romney, a guy who ended up coaching BYU football as well as BYU basketball in the late 20s to the mid 30s. He was the head coach of the Montana State Bobcats and obviously brought his Bobcats to Provo and lost that game. Now, he got the last laugh in a way because they ended up going 5-4 on the season, speaking of Montana State, so finishing higher than BYU in the standings. But then BYU, as I mentioned, had a break, and the issues BYU faced in 1922 resurfaced to a large degree, particularly on offense. Now, the Cougars went to Colorado State, or what was Colorado Agricultural in Fort Collins, Colorado, lost that game 14-6, which was a bit of a surprise because Colorado State or Colorado Agricultural was expected to run roughshod over BYU. Well, BYU got beat up in that game, and then the following week they went to Colorado and faced off against a very powerful Buffalo squad in Boulder. Well, Colorado did something that was very atypical of the 1920s in college football of that era. They threw the ball down the field, and if you read the stories about BYU in this game, Colorado was intent on just throwing the ball all over the yard, kind of a foreshadowing to 50 some odd years later when BYU would be known so heavily for just throwing the ball all over the field. But Colorado did that to BYU. The other thing is Colorado took advantage of a very, very banged up BYU team in this game, and BYU kind of limped home with a 41-0 loss to the Colorado Buffaloes. Those back-to-back road games out there in Colorado did not treat BYU well. So BYU returned home for their annual rivalry matchup against Utah. Now, reading about this Utah game, we talked yesterday about the pettiness that Utah State and Utah had for the Cougars by denying them the opportunity as debutantes in the Rocky Mountain Conference to not be able to use freshmen, unlike other newcomers to the conference. So call it what you will, but that's a rivalry tactic and obviously something that is meant to keep, quote-unquote, little brother down as long as possible. Well, in this game against Utah, BYU was considered by many to be a heavy, heavy underdog to the Utes, but BYU surprised many. Despite not scoring, they ended up limiting Utah in Provo to just 15 points. That was a thing that most of the stories talked about, that Utah, some thought they would score 30 or 40 on BYU, but the Cougars defense came to the forefront in this game. Now, overall in the season, BYU had moments of pretty good play on defense. There was an improvement on that side of the football, but the offense remained just an absolute joke for the Cougars, frankly. On the season, BYU scored a grand total of 46 points. So an improvement over the 10 points from the previous year, but they still gave up so many points once again. But going back to that Utah game just for a moment, as I was reading up on this, I did not notice this before, but did you guys know that in 1923, there was an incident in the BYU-Utah game in which Lee Richards from the University of Utah was alleged to have bitten a BYU football player? Yes, you heard that right. They called him Swede Swenson. I've got to look up his name here, but he was playing for BYU. Let me pull this up while I'm doing this. That was... oh, man, if I can find this here, give me a minute. Oh, Reed Swenson, excuse me. So you called him Swede. BYU had nicknames all over the roster for all of these guys on the football roster at the time. But in this game, he was called out by an article by BYU about biting Swede Swenson in the middle of the game. You can't tell me that this is a rivalry that's just meant to be. Remember, going back to the 1890s, the first game ever between the Utes and the Cougars was a baseball game that ended in a brawl. Folks, The BYU-Utah rivalry, we talk sometimes about it being too hot-headed, too toxic. Remember that with Larry K almost a century later. But here's the thing. It's always been a rivalry. It's always been heated, and it's always had some incredible moments. But, Lee Richards ended up biting Swede Swenson in this game. And then BYU, let me see if I can find the actual story here. Yeah, there was a poem written about it. I won't read the entire thing because it's quite long, but it says this: in 1923 comes a football fight for victory. Two colleges rivals meet on the football field, each roving their ground they'll never yield. There, the keenest of the contest, battles in war, and the men who fought as never they fought before. They were warriors worth battling nobly and well, but the thing that the spectators could never tell was whether friend Richards, the Utah man, fights or whether he's canine, and whether he's canine and fighting, he bites. You know, it's a pretty good deal. And obviously a little bit of a jab his way as he got outed for biting an opposing player. You know what? This is fun to look back and learn some of these things, because I would have never been able to tell you in 1923 that a Utah player in a win over BYU, by the way, the Utes now 2-0 over the Cougars, would bite a BYU player. But alas, that is exactly what happened. And the rest of the season played out with BYU once again winning their first ever non-conference game against Western State, 19-0, and then finishing out the season in pretty ignominious fashion, losing at Utah State 40-0, and then going to Colorado College in Colorado Springs, Colorado, and losing 31-6. That brings the grand total of BYU to 2 wins against 5 losses. And overall, a bit of a move in the right direction for BYU. Better offense, some better defense overall for the team. And you know what? One bite mark that will be left indelibly in the history books for BYU and the Utah rivalry. It is, I'm telling you, these are going to be some fun things to look back on. The first 50 years of BYU football, I'll be very, very clear once again. There's going to be a lot of down moments for BYU. They didn't have a lot of breakthroughs, but once we start moving along here, there's always storylines, and we'll talk about 1924 tomorrow with Alvin Twitchell in his 3rd season for the Cougars and how things went in that regard. An improvement is kind of the story of the thing for BYU in these early years. It's football that many of us would not recognize. 1920s college football is a far cry from what we experience here in the 2020s, but alas, it's fun to learn about our history. Speaking of BYU, where they were and now where they're at today. And the only way we can do that is by going back season by season and looking back at all these things that we learned. So if you learned anything from this today, just remember BYU and Utah, that rivalry has existed forever. And this edition in 1923 featured the chomp, as it were, as a Utah player took a piece or attempted to take a piece out of a BYU Cougar, quite literally. All right, there you go. That's what I got for you guys on this Tuesday edition of the show. It is very late as I wrap up recording this, but nonetheless, thank you for your support of this venture. It truly means the world to me that all of you check it out. I got to give some shout outs. Good friends of the podcast. Met Garrett last week at the Utah Jazz game. Wanted to give you a shout out, Garrett. Hopefully you get this. Also a shout out to Trey Alexander Sr. He is the father of Trey Alexander Jr., BYU cornerback. He talked with me at BYU practice last Saturday. Says he checks out the podcast. So Trey Sr. wanted to say hello and thank you for checking us out here. And then also our good friend Ryan Van Wagenen. He and I, like I said, it's a very late night for me here. I'm recording this in the 11 p.m. hour. I'm going to have to wake up very soon, quite literally, for my morning radio job. But he and I spent the evening playing simulator golf. Had a great round on the simulated links of Bay Hill. Had a great time with him and also his buddy Eric, who's also on social media. So Ryan, thanks for the invite. And obviously wanted to give you a shout out for the hookup as always. All right. So there you go. That's what I got for you guys on this Tuesday. A big thank you once again for the support of the podcast. As always, until tomorrow when we talk more BYU football, some BYU basketball, who knows what we'll have for you guys. Stay tuned until then. Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. Thank you for making it, being everydayers, with us right here on the podcast. And until tomorrow, my friends, this has been the Locked On Cougars podcast.